On December 20th, 2021, Betty White sat in a chair, had her hair and makeup done the way she always loved, and looked into a camera one last time. She was 99 years old. In 28 days, she would turn 100. The whole country was preparing to celebrate her. A documentary was being made. Theaters across America had booked screenings. 500,000 people had already bought tickets. Betty White was about to become a centenarian, and the world wanted to be there when it happened. So she recorded a message, a thank you to her fans, a final goodbye that nobody knew would be final. 11 days later, she was gone. And when America finally saw that video, millions of people broke down in tears. This is the story of Betty White's last message to the world. Let me take you back to the final weeks of her life. By December 2021, Betty White had become something more than a celebrity. She had become a symbol of resilience, a symbol of joy, a symbol of the idea that life doesn't end at 60 or 70 or 80, that you can still be funny, still be relevant, still be loved at 99 years old. The Internet had adopted her as America's grandmother. Every year on her birthday, social media would explode with messages of love. Protect Betty White at all costs became a cultural catchphrase. People genuinely believed that if they just wished hard enough, she would live forever. Her 100th birthday was going to be the celebration of a lifetime. Producers Steve Butcher and Mike Trinklin had been working with Betty for over 10 years on a documentary about her life. It was called Betty White, A Celebration. The film would feature interviews with her famous friends, Ryan Reynolds, Tina Fey, Robert Redford, Clint Eastwood, Morgan Freeman, Carol Burnett, Lin-Manuel Miranda. It would show clips from her 8 decades in show business. And it would premiere in theaters across America on January 17th, 2022, her 100th birthday. Betty wanted to do something special for the fans who would be watching. On December 20th, she invited the film crew to her home. She got dressed up. She had her hair styled. She put on makeup. At 99 years old, she still called it getting glammed up. The producers later said she looked amazing, striking and beautiful, radiating the same warmth that had made her famous 70 years earlier. And then she sat down in front of the camera and recorded a message. It was short, just a few sentences, but every word carried the weight of a lifetime. I just want to thank you all for your love and support over the years. Thank you so much, and stick around. Stick around. Those were the last 2 words Betty White ever spoke on camera. Stick around. As if she was planning to be there. As if she expected to see them all on the other side of her 100th birthday. As if this was just the beginning of another chapter, not the end of the story. The producers were moved. They had worked with Betty for a decade. They had watched her age, watched her slow down. But they had never seen her lose her spirit. Even at 99, she was funny. She was sharp. She was, as producer Steve Butcher later said, the adorable Betty White we all know and love. They packed up their equipment and left her home, excited to share the video with the world on her birthday. 5 days later, on Christmas Day, Betty White suffered a stroke. It was described as mild. But at 99 years old, nothing is truly mild. Her body, which had carried her through nearly a century of life, was beginning to fail. She stayed home. She rested. Her assistant was with her, watching over her, making sure she was comfortable. Betty White had never been one to complain. She had always said she had no fear of death. In interviews, she had explained why. "I don't think Betty ever feared passing," her agent Jeff Witches later told People magazine, "because she always wanted to be with her most beloved husband, Alan Ludden. She believed she would be with him again." Alan Ludden, the love of her life, the man she had married in 1963 after saying no to him twice, the man she had spent 18 perfect years with before cancer took him away in 1981, the man she had refused to replace for 40 years, telling interviewers, "When you've had the best, why settle for less?" The man whose photograph she kept on her bedside table, the man she blew a kiss to every single morning when she woke up, 6 days after her stroke, on December 31st, 2021, Betty White died peacefully in her sleep at her home in Los Angeles. She was 99 years old, 17 days short of 100. The news broke the internet. Within hours, Betty White was trending worldwide. Celebrities posted tributes. Fans shared their favorite clips. Ryan Reynolds, who had maintained a playful fake feud with her since the proposal, wrote, "The world looks different now. She was great at defying expectation. She managed to grow very old and somehow not old enough. We'll miss you, Betty. Now you know the secret." Sandra Bullock released a statement saying Betty was a role model who showed everyone how to be a human being and live your best life through example. People magazine had been so confident she would make it to 100 that they had already printed a commemorative cover celebrating her birthday. The cover had to be pulled from newsstands and replaced with a tribute edition. The headline changed from celebration to mourning overnight. But the most devastating moment was yet to come. In the days after her death, details began to emerge about her final hours. Vicki Lawrence, Betty's longtime friend and co-star from Mama's Family, reached out to Carol Burnett to share her grief. Burnett texted back with something that would break hearts around the world. "I spoke to Betty's assistant, who was with her when she passed," Burnett wrote, "and she said the very last word out of her mouth was Alan." Alan, her husband's name, the man who had been dead for 40 years, the man she had never stopped loving, the man she had been waiting to see again since 1981. "How sweet and loving is that?" Burnett asked. Lawrence shared the story publicly. "I said, 'It's so sweet and so loving, and God, I hope it's true. For all of us, I really hope it's true.' Think about what this means." Betty White spent the last moment of her life calling out to the man she had loved for 60 years. She had kept his photograph by her bed. She had blown him a kiss every morning. She had refused to remarry because no one could ever compare. And in her final breath, she was going home to him. Her agent confirmed it. "I don't think Betty ever feared passing because she always wanted to be with her most beloved husband, Alan Ludden. She believed she would be with him again." 40 years of waiting, 40 years of loneliness disguised as a smile, 40 years of waking up alone in a bed that used to hold 2 people. And finally, at 99 years old, Betty White was going to see Alan again. On January 17th, 2022, what would have been her 100th birthday, Betty White, a celebration premiered in theaters across America. The producers had debated whether to go forward with the screening. In the end, they decided Betty would have wanted it. The film became a tribute instead of a celebration, and for the first time, the world saw that video she had recorded on December 20th. There she was, glammed up, as she called it, smiling that smile that had charmed America for 7 decades, looking into the camera with eyes that had seen more history than almost anyone alive, and saying those words. I just want to thank you all for your love and support over the years. Thank you so much, and stick around. The audiences wept. They wept because she looked so alive in that video. They wept because she had no idea it would be her last message. They wept because stick around felt like a promise she couldn't keep. They wept because 11 days after recording that video, she was gone. Betty White's final video became a symbol of everything she represented: the gratitude, the grace, the refusal to take anything for granted. Even at 99, even facing her mortality, even knowing that her body was failing, she took the time to say thank you, not to ask for anything, not to make demands, just to express appreciation for the people who had watched her, loved her, and invited her into their homes for 8 decades. In the weeks after her death, fans organized a movement to honor her memory. They called it the Betty White Challenge. On January 17th, her birthday, people were encouraged to donate to animal shelters and rescue organizations in her name. Betty had been a lifelong animal advocate. She had served on the board of the Los Angeles Zoo. She had supported countless wildlife causes. The challenge went viral. Shelters across America reported receiving millions of dollars in donations. People who had never met Betty White gave money to causes she cared about because she had taught them, through her example, to be kind. Her assistant Kirsten Miklas later shared one of the last photographs ever taken of Betty. It was from December 20th, the same day she recorded her final video. In the photo, she is sitting in a chair, slightly smiling, looking radiant despite her 99 years. Michaelis wrote, "She was radiant and beautiful and as happy as ever. She knew how lucky she was. She felt the love, and she never took it for granted." She never took it for granted. That phrase keeps coming back. In a world of entitled celebrities, Betty White spent her final days thanking people for loving her. She didn't demand attention. She didn't expect adoration. She simply expressed gratitude, genuine, heartfelt, sincere gratitude for a lifetime of support. The documentary revealed something else about Betty's final years. She had kept that stuffed bunny, the one Alan Ludden had given her in 1962 when he was trying to convince her to marry him. The one with the note that said, "Please say yes." She had kept it on her bed for nearly 60 years. She had slept with it every night since Alan died. It was still there when she passed. Betty White's life was a love story with her audience, who adored her for 8 decades. A love story with her animals, who she fought for until her final breath. A love story with her craft, which she practiced longer than almost anyone in television history. And above all, a love story with Alan Ludden, the man she loved for 60 years and called out to as she died. When they found her, she was at peace. She had lived 99 years. She had made millions of people laugh. She had broken barriers, defied expectations, and proven that age is just a number. And in the end, she went quietly, in her own home, surrounded by the memories of a life well lived, Her final video message runs less than 30 seconds. But in those 30 seconds, you can see everything that made Betty White special. The sparkle in her eyes, the warmth in her voice, the genuine love she had for the people who loved her back. Thank you so much, and stick around. We couldn't keep her, but we can keep her memory. We can remember the woman who thanked her fans with her final breath. We can remember the actress who was still getting glammed up at 99. We can remember the wife who waited 40 years to see her husband again, and whose last word on this earth was his name. Betty White asked us to stick around, and we will, because people like her don't come along very often, and when they go, they leave a hole in the world that nothing can fill. Stick around, she said. We promise, Betty, we will.